All right, hello everybody. Welcome to this session of Make It with Michaels. I'm Pete Donner, and I am a Lego Master Model Builder. I've been lucky enough to work for the Lego company for over 20 years now, and in that time I've worked on everything from life-size models, including cars, not peoples, and even a house. And I have a lot of experience. I hope to share some of that today. We're gonna share some models and some tips on how to build it, but I'm not here alone, so let me introduce my partner in crime, Chris. Chris, why don't you tell everybody about yourself?
All right. Hey, everyone. How's it going? So as Pete said, my name is Chris. I'm a Lego Master Model Builder as well. And so Pete and I both work out of Enfield, Connecticut, which is the North American headquarters for Lego. And that's where we design, build, and create all these large-scale sculptures like you would see all over the world at any Lego event. And so I've been doing it for now 14 years, and it's been a lot of fun because I get to travel the world playing with Lego. So my main role has been creating large-scale sculptures in public. So I'll go out to a Lego event and I'll build a big 8-foot-tall Yoda or a 20-foot-tall rocket. So that's really where my role has been within the team, is building large-scale sculptures in public. So Pete, you want to take us through the build here?
Before we do that, I want to introduce, we have Sam Saucier with us. She's going to be helping to facilitate some question and answer, but I'm not going to tell you about it because I'd rather let her tell you and introduce herself. So Sam, if you don't mind taking a moment and introducing yourself.
Sure, thanks guys. Hi everybody. So my name is Sam and I work in the model shop with Chris and Pete. So for the first part of class, we're going to be working on the first model that they're going to show that's got the summer theme. So if you have any questions about that build as we go along, feel free to post them in the Q&A section on the bottom of your screen. There's a tab. In the middle portion of the class, we'd love to take some suggestions on what summer themed builds you'd like to see the guys tackle here live, so you can be thinking about that too. And later, we're going to be taking questions for Chris and Pete on anything you'd like to know about working at Lego. So whether it's how to become a master model builder, general building tips and tricks, anything, you can just ask. So between the three of us, we hope to get you an answer by the end of the session today. So just be sure to use that special Q&A section so that we can see your questions. So with that, have fun building today. Back to you guys.
So thank you, Sam. So I'm going to share my screen so I can lead this build. Let me do so. And so we're building within a summer theme. So what better to express the summer than a family road trip? We have a few other models we're going to show the build outs of, but this one we're going to take you through the building steps one by one so everybody can follow along. I'm actually going to do it a little differently than we've typically done it. So this way maybe we can show a little bit more in terms of angles of the build, because this, although it is small, is slightly more complicated than some of the builds we've done in the past here with Michaels. But without further ado, we're going to jump in. So just a quick lay of the land for people who are new to Lego and maybe not be hyper familiar with how our steps are built. Over here in the corner, this is the number of the step you're on. Sometimes if you're doing a sub build, which is a smaller assembly that would go into a larger build, this number will reset. So it can be confusing. So if that happens, that usually means that what you were previously building will not be shown anymore, and the numbers will reset. And then once that's complete, it'll go back. So if you're on step 1, then step 2 is a sub build, it would start over with 1. When you completed that, you'd go to step 2, and that's how you'd know how to put it in. Right next to it, we have this blue box. Within that is the pieces you need for this step. So to build this first step in this set, which is actually the tow behind camper, all you need is one element, which is a 2x2 plate with post and ball, I believe it's called, which is part of a ball and socket joint. That's all you need for this step. And over here, because we're actually starting with a sub build, we have a yellow box, which is also a vignette, which is just a fancy way of saying a call out. And this is what we'll be building in the first section. So without further ado, this is the first piece we're going to put down. Again, we're asking everybody to either use parts they have at home. You can most certainly find a lot of these elements if you have Star Wars sets or you have anything in the vein of Creator or Classic. So without further ado, we're going to go to step number 2. Now in step number 2, this one can be a little bit tricky. I can actually rotate this around so we can see. This is a 1x2 curved brick. And when typically you get the vignette so you can see what the element is. So in a step like this, where it's a little bit harder to tell what that piece is, that's where you would always want to go back to your vignette box. But again, we're putting that on. We're putting it on the back, front and back studs of the 2x2 plate beneath it. You can see where it goes because it's outlined in red. That'll follow with each sequential step, which is the next step will also be outlined in red, but the pieces put in this step will not. So as we move to 3, we're basically going to use the same element from 2 and just flip it around and put it on the front. And now you can start to see we're getting a really nice camper shape. Yeah, so we're going to move forward. And now this is a good tip and trick. If we look at this step here, we're adding this bearing plate to the bottom, and that is how we're going to attach the tiles, which represent the wheels in this build. But we're putting it on now as opposed to the first step, so the model isn't rocking and flipping over while you're trying to build it. So this is a bit of a pro tip. This is something for anyone who's building at home. You'll normally see in a kit or building instructions you would get in a set. This element would go on last, and that is for a really important reason. That's for stability while you're building. So that's why we're adding this piece to this section. As we move down, we're going to see that now we're adding 2 of these in, which these blue Technic pins, they're called Technic Pin with stud. This will allow you to stick the wheels on. So you're putting 2 in, and since you can only see one side, it's obvious it's being mirrored to the other side. If I go up a step, you can see here that this plate has 2 sockets. So when you come to this step, you're essentially just adding 1 to one side, 1 to the other side. For those who are joining us now, I just wanted to throw out that we're doing a really quick summer build, and to celebrate summer, at least in my universe, in my experience, summer vacations always manifest or took place on the road. So we're doing a quick camper van and station wagon to get a little reminiscent of the world that I grew up in. I'm willing to bet Chris did as well.
Oh yeah, plenty of camping trips cross country for sure.
That's right. So moving on to step number 6. Let's get down here. Now we're adding a tile. We're using 2 of them. So again, this is where you want to key in and you want to look in your vignette box and make sure you're using all the elements that are called out. But obviously if one is on the right side, one will also be on the left side. And this will complete the camper van section. So I spoke at the beginning of these instructions about your numbers will reset when you go from one to the next. This is an example of where that is not going to happen based on how I laid the instructions out to try to be less confusing. So I'm sorry if calling it out may make it more confusing, but that's not my intention. So now we're going to go to step 7, and you'll see we have a blue box for the vignette, but now we also have a yellow vignette, which is denoting what we're going to be building here, which this is a bit more complicated than the last one. So without getting too lost in the weeds, we're going to take our time. This is a car. You could build this car without this gray piece that's on the screen now and just have it as a separate car. But this gray piece is the element that will allow us to connect it to the camper van. So moving on from there, we're going to go from step 7 to 8. And this is one of the steps that you'll get in instructions occasionally where they do not overlap. So they do not actually stud down in this step. So this is more about getting your parts aligned. So we're taking this 2x4 plate, we're sliding it up against the 1x2 with socket. And then you notice when we go to step 9, we're taking another 2x4 plate, and now we're sandwiching the top of the plate and of the socket plate. That way we're going to interlock them, we're going to interlock them, and that is going to make it so that they are nice and strong, and there'll be a firm base for us to build on as we move forward. We're going to go to step 10, and now we're using a tile, and this is to change the texture. So sometimes in models, we'll use different types of elements where other elements would fit. So this is a really good point for me to call out. If you don't have all the colors or elements you have here, great thing about Lego is it's very flexible. So when you build with Lego brick, you can take your parts and really create anything. So if you don't have this tile, it could be any other part that's a 1x2. It could be a plate, a grill, a tile, anything that's really going to fit in there, even a cheese wedge or something to that like. But in this model, we're trying to make it a flat trunk. So we went with a tile in this instance. So carrying on, now we're adding a 1x2 cheese wedge. And this 1x2 cheese wedge is simulating the glass. Again, this could just be 2 stacked 1x2 plates. It could be a black or a white or any other color cheese wedge, implying a tinted window, or just, it's really just about changing the color for the pieces beneath it so that it feels like it's some other sort of material. Going down, we're adding a 2x2 plate right behind it. That's again simulating the windows for the side passenger window and driver's windows and back rear seat windows. Going on top. Now this is another 1x2 element. It's a 1x2 plate. It's got a half stud is what we call it internally. The fans call it a jumper plate. And what this does is it separates the distance between two studs, centering it on the element, which will allow us to add a fancy detail, which we'll be adding in a moment, and I'll go into greater detail then. But again, check your vignette because it's actually two elements and they stack right on top of the previous 2x2 plate. We move to step number 14. We're finishing off the back. Now we've got a little bit of the hatchback to our station wagon, and the car is really starting to come together. So when I go to 15, we're adding a sand yellow or dark tan, whatever you want to call it, 1x2 plate, and it's going to jump across those two studs on the half studs on the roof of the car. And this is simulating what would be like a camper topper where you would bring extra stuff if you needed, clothes or what have you. But by using the jumper plates beneath it or the half studs, it allows us to offset it and give us a nice detail on a model that is actually pretty small. So when you're designing, there's plenty of options at any scale to add detail, which is fun and can tell a really nice story. So looking at step number 16, we're going to a 1x2 tile in the same dark tan, and it's just going to sit right on top of the other one. And now as we roll into step 17, pun fully intended, since we're building a car, we're adding two of the bearing plates. So I'm going to actually flip this over so everyone can see. So we're adding a bearing plate, then we're adding a 1x2, which you can see here in the vignette, and then another bearing plate. And this is a bit of an advanced build. And for the same reasons we did it on the camper van, we're adding these at this point, not at the beginning, so you have stability while you're building. But additionally, this is not one solid plate. So by putting these on now, they're going to be easier because you can just stud them onto an existing base, and it's just an easier build. So everyone flip over all of the build all the way through to step 16, then add your two 2x2 bearing plates, your 1x2 tile plate in the middle, and then we can flip it back over and we can go to step 18. And here we're going to add in the, we're using 4 of these different pins. And as I flip it, you can see that they are going in on both sides. And as such, you'll now have the same wheel connection that we had in the camper itself. So when we go to step 19, you'll see that we're adding the 4 tiles. So now we have our wheels. And in the next step, on step 20, we're going to pick up the camper we built in the earlier session and the station wagon we just completed. We're going to plug those together. And now you have a pretty awesome, pretty quick, and really small but playable camper van and station wagon. So what do you think, Chris? I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I believe you physically have this built out, as well as some other options that we came up with when we were kicking around the ideas of what we could do for summer build themes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Pete. Yeah, I don't know about you, Pete. I actually enjoyed building all these. So prior to this event with you all, Pete and I really did a bit of a brainstorming where we threw out a bunch of ideas of what did summer mean to us. And so we have a few different examples here, and really the one that really stuck out was going on vacation, right? So that's why we came up with the camper van as the lead model for the design that we wanted to show off and have you build. And there's a few reasons too, also because it's a largely a simpler build. It's a smaller build. It's a little micro model here. And see, my version is slightly different than the one Pete did because I was just using elements we had in the shop. So I wasn't too concerned about it being, having a few pieces that may be different. You can see here, the camper van is actually entirely different. It's just what I had hanging around, but in general, it fits the bill. It's a car or a wagon hauling around a camper here. So in the end, use whatever elements you have hanging around. We're going to make these building instructions available so that you can build it at home at your on your own time. I know we went through fairly quick there. But we will make them available so you can build it later on as well. So there is my version of the camper van. Now, I think one of the cool things about this is it doesn't have to end with the camper van. You can take and make it into a scene if you like. So here I we have a little bit of scene as well here. So let's say more or less a mountain scene, as if you were going through the mountain to get to your destination. And you can put it right there in your mountain scene and everything. It can be a bigger one. You can add maybe a campground site, whatever it is that you'd like to have in there. But it's kind of like something you do under summer vacation, hitting the open road and going through the mountains to get to your vacation. So some of the other things that we talked about. So of course, 4th of July, right? Super popular. So we decided we should make an American flag to go along with that. So I thought this was a fun build, very patriotic, and a lot of fun to make. Another fun model that Pete came up with here is, I don't know, Pete, you must have been at your young years, maybe at a skate park or something like that, hanging out, and had to bring your radio, right?
I did, yeah. And,
absolutely. So
every kid on this knows what a tape cassette is. So I wanted to make sure that this was a tape one and not a CD one.
That's right. There is right in there. That's the tape. So that's old school right there. We don't. I don't think most of these kids know what that is nowadays. So we have that. What else do we have? Oh, of course. You know, Pete and I are on the East Coast, and we have lots of lighthouses around our area. So a lighthouse is another cool one. We have a rocky coastline here, and kind of the water crashing along the rocks. And then, of course, the lighthouse to protect all those sailors traveling around the oceans. So another cool thing that just made me think of summer as well. So summer may mean something different to you, depending on where you live. So go ahead and make something creative that reminds you of your summer vacation. Oh, I have one more here. Pete, I don't know about you, but when I go to the beach, I always see, beach balls everywhere. So I figured, why not make what we call a sideways built beach ball? So I'm kind of showing you here the inside of the ball, and it's actually made of 2 halves that are identical. And I can put this together right like this, and there's some sideways building bricks, as you can see right on here, which are going to allow me to attach the sides of the beach ball here. So let's see if I can put this together real quick here for you.
And Chris, while you're doing that, I just want to call out, because it's inspired me to once again share with everyone who's watching this, that there's no right way to build a Lego brick. Chris has got more of an SUV style van or car. I have more of a station wagon, but there's minor tweaks to get from one to the other. His camper van is more of a full build out. Mine's more of a pop up. But again, they're both fun. They're both playful, and they both might represent different childhood memories. And you could see all of the different things. I mean, obviously we leaned heavy into the travel theme, because I think, especially here in the United States, summers when family does that, and they get on the road and they get in planes and they travel around. So that's really where we were hitting. But for everyone out there who's wondering, what do you need to build these things? We really did try to limit it to stuff that are pretty easily found in current sets. What Chris has in his hand now, with the exception of maybe 8 or 10 different sideways bricks, those are all basic brick and plate. So what we're showing here is really stuff that you should be able to build from your bucket of brick at home. But if you need to grow your assortment, feel free to pick up some classic sets. That's where you're going to get the broadest spectrum of colors and shapes and sizes. And those will help to facilitate the builds that we're showing in this Michael's video, or previous ones that we've been lucky enough to be part of. So Chris, why don't you tell us about that beach ball?
Yeah, I think you nailed it right here. It's largely built of basic brick. It's largely plate, actually, in this case, but it's going to be stuff that you have at home. Generally, lots of you may not have the exact colors. You may have green. Go ahead, make it out of green. Make it out of red, green, yellow, orange, whatever you have hanging around. So I think the key, like Pete already said, is build with what you have. It doesn't really have to be exactly the way we've shown them. It's use your own imagination. That's the key with Lego, is that it's meant to be a creative toy, and your own imagination is supposed to come out in every build. So Pete, what do you say? Should we ask Sam for some questions? Should we do some questions now?
Yeah, and I just reminder again, if there's anything that you would like us to try to make, I actually, and we're both, you can tell, in our homes, we're not in the shop, so we have limited access to brick. So I was going to utilize a piece of software that you can get on bricklink.com. It's called Bricklinkstudio, and I was going to digitally illustrate something. I don't know what Chris's approach is going to be, but if anyone has a suggestion of something they'd like to see that's maybe summer themed, we can take a shot at that. And also, if you have questions, about who we are, what we do, what's our experience been, how did we get to be here. Throw those into the Q&A section, and Sam will, offer them up to Chris and I, and we'll answer them to the best of our ability. So, Sam, I don't know if we got any questions waiting for us, or.
Yes, so we've gotten a few questions, and I think it would be a good thing to address. What's the difference between being a master model builder, the people who are set designers, and then the people who are on the Lego Masters show as judges?
Okay, so Chris, I guess I'll start.
Yeah.
The difference between a master set designer is model builders really kind of take the sets that everyone has at home and push beyond what you get in the box. So to me, a set designer, they're actually going through the very impressive and really important process of designing sets that can be recreated. So if they were going to do the camper van that we just demonstrated here, we went through all the same steps, but it would be a much longer and lengthier process, because they want to ensure that they're not just showing you how to make a camper van, but they're teaching you the appropriate way to use Lego bricks when you're building. Chris and I get to go into a little bit different direction in all master builders, because we're taking the elements and the knowledge you get in sets and pushing past it. So we'll take thousands and thousands of the elements you get in a single set, and we'll build a human being, or we'll build a house, or we'll build a car, to really express how far you can take Lego as a medium of creativity and possibilities, and really just create anything at virtually any scale. We're doing a blue camper van today in front of us, you guys and gals, live with building instructions, but we've actually built life-size cars that are the same color palette with a lot of similarities. So Chris, you want to tackle who is on Lego Masters and why and what they do?
Yeah. So Lego Masters obviously is more of a game show style. So those are typically going to be your adult fans of Lego, and they've obviously have competed to get onto the show by showing off their really awesome Lego abilities. And so they basically are contestants on the show. So everything they do is pretty awesome. I've seen quite a few, obviously season 1, as well as some of the stuff from season 2 already. And they do some pretty amazing stuff. And that's really across the Lego world, really. As far as some of the stuff I've seen built by kids, it amazes me just as much as some of the stuff that we do on a large scale. Largely because we know what it's like to build out of a bin of brick. It can be difficult finding the right piece you're looking for. So it's pretty awesome to see what they're doing on Lego Masters, as well as in the adult and fan community as well.
We should just call out too, Chris, that so Jamie and Amy, who are the hosts on Lego Masters US, they are set designers. So I believe
Correct.
that Amy works with, I believe, the Dots line, if I'm not mistaken. And I think Jamie is a leader of the design team over there. And I think he focuses on creator stuff. They design the sets. I've actually met both of them. They're both extremely nice and awesome people, very talented, and they're great options for hosting the show and offering feedback in terms of the potential of the Lego brick as an artistic medium. So,
absolutely. Very good.
So
what do we have?
Looking through the comments here, you've got a couple of requests. Someone was actually asking if you could show them how to do a cactus or a cactus garden. I don't know how difficult that is. Maybe easier in the design program. Also, we have a request for a, let's see here. Somebody also asked if they could see the radio being built.
The radio?
The boom box.
I could show, unless you have the digital version readily available, I can take off the studs and really give a good wraparound view of this. I mean, I could take off some of the elements.
Yeah, why don't you do that? And while you do that, I'll work up a cactus.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of peel this apart here. It's pretty simple, actually. It's kind of actually amazing how simple Pete did this one. And it's pretty cool. Let's see here. Kind of break it down. Whoa, just lost the piece. I lost the record button.
It's one of the most important parts, Chris.
I know. I got it back. All right. So I kind of broke it down here. Now it's 2 studs wide. It's not largely, it's 2x6 wide. So it's 2 studs thick, 6 studs long. We have this 1x4 plate element here, which is actually got 2 studs on the top, 4 studs on the side, and that's allowing us to add the buttons, which are the control buttons there. So you have the play button, record button, all that stuff is in there. And then we have 1x2 with 4 stud on the side. Pete, I don't know, do you know offhand the technical name? It's a sideways building brick, but it's a 1x2 with 4 studs on the side. Then we have a 1x2 with 2 studs on the side. And what this allows us to do is attach the actual speakers here and then the tape deck as well. So that's this one right here. And this is just transparent, a smoked transparent element. You can use whatever you want. You can use any tile element just to give it that look that it's the actual door to the cassette. Now, as far as the top here, the handle itself, it is just a 1x6 tile here with 2 1x1 rounds. And then we have 2 half studs, or as the fan community like to call them, jumper studs, which allow us to attach the handle. And then up top here, we have a 1x3 tile that is going to go right on in there. And that finishes off the top of the actual boom box here. And I'm going to go ahead and put all this stuff back on there. And you're going to see here, it makes a really cool boom box. Pete, I like this one a lot, actually. We've done some other boom boxes that were a little bit bigger scale than this, but this is a great scale for just about anything. Oh. Have you been able to work on a cactus?
I am. I probably need a minute or two.
That's fine. That's fine. I'll tote.
If you'd like another question, guys, somebody asked, what is your favorite Lego brick?
Oh, favorite Lego brick. Let me go with mine first because I have one right here in front of me. So there it is, the finished model, the boombox there. Pretty cool. It's still fairly simple. There's actually a 1x6 along the back edge there completed. Fairly simple. All right, so my favorite brick, all right, or favorite Lego element, and I have it right here. It's the generic 2x4. I like it because it's versatile. This flag right here is largely built out of it. You can see all the 2x4s being built in there. Creates a nice, simple American flag. But you can use it to build large-scale sculptures. When I do the building events that you'll see, we'll actually do what's called a 4x building event, where we'll build a model that's 4 times as big as a 2x4. And to build that model, I'll have guests make those 4x bricks, and I'll use it. But they're all based on this 2x4 element. It allows us to build something 8 feet tall, 20 feet tall, and bigger. So in my opinion, it's one of the most versatile bricks because it has 8 studs on top. So you have a bunch of different connections. Here's a perfect example of why there's a bunch of different connections. You can actually combine these 2 2x4 bricks 24 different ways without repeating the pattern. So that's kind of what makes it versatile to me. And that's why I like it. Pete, what about you?
Yeah, let's see here. So I'm gonna just let me change the color of this really quick, and then I will share my screen. So my favorite element, it changes, right? Because we've been doing this for a long time. Like
Yeah.
For a really long time doing this. And what I really appreciate is how much the system of brick and how brick works and goes together changes. So I really like, you showed an example of it. It's the 1x2 by 5 plates tall brick that has 4 studs on it. And that's called a sideways building brick. And as a designer who has to do things like recreate a human face or recreate, a really intricate, detailed pattern or something to that effect, I think that the sideways bricks have really changed the amount of detail we can put into our builds and our designs. But as I said, it's kind of fluid. It changes over the time. Chris and I just did a project that we had to start using some Technic elements, which, if I'm being totally honest with everyone, that's not an area of expertise of mine. But since then, I've actually been digging in and learning. So the ability to add movement to models has become very interesting to me. So there's a few different Technic elements that I find to be really helpful and valuable in what I'm doing now. So I do have a cactus, so I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. So I made a little cactus. This would be about minifigure scale. And I went about this in a way where first thing this cactus was the request, but I put a little bit of effort into making a cool shaped base. You know, to me, that just is a fun way to add detail to something that you're working on. And when you think of Lego, you tend to think of Lego being really square. So Lego bricks are usually blocks. So they're usually in the shape of a square with 90-degree angles. But if you use these bricks elements here, these are called wing plates. They have really nice angles on them. And if you use them in conjunction with different sizes and shapes, you can get a really cool base. So that's one option. Then I wanted to show, to build this cactus, I use very similar pieces on the two arms, but they're very different builds. So if you wanted to go with a bit more of a round build, you could use this element. And you'll notice that this round here has holes in the side. And I use the stud on the element here to put this into this side. And then I used a arched plate or a curved bowed plate, and that has studs going upwards. So this would be like an inverted bow, and that will allow me to plug this in here. And then if you wanted to, you could cap it off with a tile. Whereas on the other side, I use the same technique we used to put the wheels on the car. So this is actually not the right color. So let me change this very quickly to blue. So this is just a pin. This is the same pin that was in the car. Now that's going to allow me to do a standard build, turn it on its side and stick it on the top. So to me, this is a good expression of how you can very quickly utilize different techniques, different elements. If I only had the elements to make the cactus this way, I think it works. And then there's one other way I was going to demonstrate making the cactus, and that would be using tiles. So there's a lot of really new fun tiles. So you have this tile here. So you could make it a 2D cactus, which I don't know that in the past has been something people have considered when they've been making stuff with Lego, but you can make really intricate designs, and these come in both the new art sets as well as the dot sets. And through the use of these, you can really get some cool, fun designs. So I'm just really quickly gonna try and set this up to make it look like a cactus, and add a little bit more speed to it here. So this software is really awesome because it really does let you quickly come up with stuff and make pressing. Oops, sorry, grabbed the wrong key. Clone, drop. And just like that, you're able to make 2D cactus, and you can change the color very quickly. So hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully that's insightful. And with that, Sam, if we have any other questions, Chris and I would love to answer them.
Yeah.
Yes, we actually have a few people asking to see the Lego trophy, Chris, that's on the shelf behind you and wanting to know about that. How long did it take, and how long do some of these bigger builds take?
So this trophy here is something that we actually have quite a few of in the shop. We've used them for all sorts of different things. My father, a former master model builder, it was kind of funny. This was for a holiday. It was for the best casserole. So my father wanted to make something that whoever walked away during that holiday had something nice, and I happened to make the best casserole that year. So on the top here, you can kind of see it actually has a casserole dish on there as well. So it's kind of a funny thing, but so the trophies are actually, there's actually another backstory to this as well. And this is one of the first models you would build when you come into the model shop and start as a model builder trainee. So to kind of gauge the type of builder you are, you would build a model like this because it involves many different building techniques as that you would be required to learn when building a large scale model. So number one is it requires you to build something that's curved, something that's rounded on the bottom. So we have a rounded bottom to the model. Building the handles, which are a little bit thinner, not as well interlocked into the model because it kind of hang out here. makes it a little bit difficult. So that could fumble up some new builders. Well, they might be building and crunching it or squishing them too hard and the model is collapsing on them. But it's also utilizing different elements along here as well. So we also use it to ensure that you're following the prototype. So in the end, they would have a certain amount of time to build this. And we'd look at it and say, all right, well, they matched the model exactly. They got it exactly right, which is key because when we build our large scale sculptures, it has to look like the design is intended. And we would look at a bunch of different things. So how long did it take them? And did they build it correctly? Or just a couple examples. But yeah, so it's a trophy that we actually use as a training trophy. In this case, casserole
I'm just going to let you know we have several people asking about the software that you were showing before. If you could just name that again.
Yeah, I actually think I typed an answer in there because it popped up on my screen. This has never happened before, and I felt compelled. But it's called Studio 2.0. It can be found on Bricklink.com, and it's very similar to Lego Digital Designer. It's actually the follow-up software to that in some sense, and it's really powerful. We use it in another version. Internally, we have a software called LDD Pro that we use. It's very similar to this. It's a little bit different. And we have a software called Lego Brick Builder, and that's how we make the large scale models. And Chris, I don't know if you touched on it, so I will really quickly. If I was to make a model of myself or Chris, depending on level of detail and complexity. So if Chris, was wearing some sort of weird space suit, that would obviously add time and complexity potentially. But it takes anywhere from 40 to 120 hours, depending on if we're making a famous, character from a movie that everyone's familiar with. That will take 120 hours just to design it. And we actually will design the face by hand. And the body will usually use a mixture of hand design, prototypes, and digital design, as well as the face. But the faces, we tend to do a lot of drawings and a lot of traditional methods like digital sculpting and what have you to get the likeness. So that can be anywhere from, 40 on a very simple end, 120 hours on a very detailed end. And then in production, there's another range of a simple character can take about 100 to 140 hours to build. Or if you look at somebody like Thor that we did from one of the Marvel movies many years back as a standard size human, I think he was 280 hours to build. So really complexity, color usage, because some elements you can only get a few shapes, which is an important note that we do not use any elements that don't exist. Some people are very surprised when they find out that if I wanted to, I got to work on Thanos a few years ago and they wanted a gauntlet in gold. So we could only use the elements we had. So we actually built most of that gauntlet out of 1x2 plate, 1x4 plate, 1x6 plate. And his fist is actually the size of my torso. So it's a lot of building with a bunch of small parts, and there's a lot of intricate detail. But it's really important to us. I mentioned it before, and segmenter between us and set designers. We're here to inspire. We're here to teach, but teach more like an artist would learn how to use clay. And we can't do that if we're using clay that the world can't get access to. So it's important that everyone knows that we only use what's current and can be available today. So we can't get parts that were 10 years ago very readily available, and today they are not. We only use what people can get today. So that's an important note.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have a lot of people asking, what's the largest model that each of you have ever taken a part of building?
Oh man, we worked on some big models, Pete.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So what's the largest one that I've ever worked on? I think it's gonna have to go all the way back to the life-size X-Wing. So I worked on the installation and helped a little bit with the actual building of the model. It was a life-size X-Wing fighter. You could actually sit inside the cockpit. It, I believe it weighed in at 44,000 pounds, so 22 tons. It took 17,000 hours to build. And this was largely built by our team over in the Czech Republic. So we have a really big model shop over there where our team is very small. So we had done that over there. And then what else? What some other facts about it? I believe it was 5.7 million pieces, something like that. So it was to build that one.
Yeah. So I would have to say, from my experience, there's two very large models that I was lucky to work on. One of them I designed by myself, and I did execute some of the production, but it was a team of 5 of us, and that was more recently. I was the designer behind Thanos, as I just mentioned. As a human figure, it's probably one of the biggest human figures we'll ever make because he stands about 8.5 feet tall when he's upright. But before that, I worked on many years, but I think it's about 8 years ago, was one of the first projects of this magnitude that I was able to, take a lead on, both from production and design, actually. We recreated Bilbo Baggins' house from The Hobbit. And there's actually a really nice documentary for the kids out there. If you're interested and your parents approve, you can go find the video on lego.com. There's about a 7-minute documentary of the making of the model. But when it was all said and done, it was about 20 feet, and from left to right, and about 8 feet deep and about 7.5 feet tall, with a fully opening door. There was a fireplace. We had a smoke machine in. There was lights throughout the inside. We built out all of the characters from the journey that Bilbo goes on in the Hobbit books. So that's probably the biggest one that I worked on. And I think the most interesting fact about it is we had about 8.5 weeks from the time we were asked in the shop to do the project to the completion, and the model was actually built to create the documentary. So it was less about making a model that could travel all around, although this model did for a period of time. It was more about really showcasing what you could do with Lego brick, and some time, some ingenuity, and a whole lot of luck, because we did a lot really fast with a bunch of new builders and a bunch of designers hammering away at it at a time. So that's a really proud point for me. Probably the biggest model I've been involved with personally, at least at that level.
Sweet.
And looking at some requests here, you have a few people asking if you can design some kind of Lego beach scene. I know that's a bit of a challenge here.
That is. I am limited by just as many bricks as you probably have at home here. So I don't have a great selection of, sand yellow. That's what we call this one here. So I don't have a ton of that. But that would make perfect sand. But doesn't mean it needs to be that color. Your beach scene could be orange, right, Pete?
That's right. Yeah. So I'll take a crack at it. I think scenes are one of the more challenging things that you make from a time perspective. Normally, if we were to make a model of a scene at certain sizes, as you get larger, they can take more time actually than a life-size person. But hey, I'm not above trying. I don't know if it'll take a little bit of time, Sam. So if there's any questions that we can answer while we're doing it, that might make it a little bit more interesting for people.
Yeah, Chris, you actually have a few people asking to see the lighthouse in a little more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. So here is the lighthouse. And I gotta go for a little bit of slow spin here. So I thought what I enjoyed doing about this lighthouse was not so much about the lighthouse, because it's basically 2x2 rounds making up the actual lighthouse. I enjoyed more or less the landscaping of it, the placing of the rocks and the boulders and stuff like that. So it looks like it's been weathered and beaten down by the ocean, and kind of over the years the tides have weathered the rocks. I enjoyed that part of it the most. Kind of a cool use up here. So what I was going for up top here was kind of like the lookout, the walk around. So I'm sure the lighthouse keeper would have to go out and inspect the light, make sure everything's working right. So we don't want them falling off. So I made this look kind of more like a guardrail going around here. This is I believe it's technically jumping elements here. A 3x3 cone to a 2x2. And you can see here, that's my base, the starting point here. And we're working our way up here through the model here. I actually, to add a little bit of color here, I added some 2x2 round red in there. And those are actually plates, because I didn't want them to be super big, the full 3 bricks, 3 plates tall. So in case you didn't know this, it actually takes 3 plates to equal the height of a brick. So it takes 3 pieces that are this thick to equal the height of this right here, which is a brick. So 3 of these tall equal the height of 1 brick. So that's another way you can add detail to your model by using those the plates in the model. It helps to actually increase your detail level 3 times compared to a brick. So here you go, a more detailed view of that.
And you also have a few people asking how you guys organize your Legos.
Oh man, Pete, do you want? I don't know if you have any there, Pete. I don't have any around me currently. Do you have any trays, Pete, by any chance?
I do. Hang on.
Oh, cool. So I'll just briefly describe while Pete's digging up his trays. There's a few different ways you can do it. In particular, you may be able to go to a local store nearby you. There it is, right there. Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, so this is one of the ones that we have in the shop. This was actually a retired caddy that I was able to take home. So all of the Lego that I use, Lego bricks I use at home, are in one of those trays, and you can see it's got little pockets. And these trays are actually designed to have a tray for every size Lego brick that exists in basic. So you have a 1x1 all the way up to a 1x10, a 2x2 all the way up to a 2x10. And that's just for production. But honestly, the sets that you're getting these days, if you look at it, I think a lot of the Technic sets have them, a lot of the Dot sets have them. There's little plastic trays. I think Chris was just about to say that we in the shop even, we have the same kinds of dividers you would use for, screws, nuts and bolts, that kind of stuff that will divide some of the smaller elements in. I have, 3 kids, but my youngest daughter really loves Dot's elements, and she's got a billion of them. And in her room, she has a whole bunch of little cups and things that she's devised this really organized system that she works from. I think the trick is having them organized in a way that you can see the bulk of them at one time really inspires creative usage, and it doesn't get you hammered down to using 1 or 2 elements. I think even more important than having something that looks really fancy, it's more about having something that has access and visibility to as much of your collection as possible, because then you're going to use more elements than you probably would if you couldn't see them. But I don't know if you've got a tip beyond that, Chris.
No, I think you nailed it. That was it. I was going to say you could go to a local store and pick out something like either a tackle box or something like that for nuts and bolts maybe is really a good way to sort it out. And when you sort it out, I think the key is maybe you don't sort it out necessarily first by shape and size, maybe just sort it by color. So just an easy way is to sort by color. And then you can really start breaking it down by individual elements as well. So it's all about what works best for you, how you sort out your bricks.
Yeah, 100%.
And guys, we've got about 10 minutes left here, so I'm still getting through the questions. We have a few people asking, what was one of your most frustrating moments or really challenging moment on one of these big builds that you experienced, and how did you kind of overcome that?
I would say that, ironically, for everyone who has seen the movie, they had a really hard time trying to get the gauntlet off of Thanos's arm, and we actually had a bit of a struggle getting it on. There was a misalignment. We haven't talked about it here, but we glue all of our Lego bricks together in our models, and that's so that these models can travel around the world. We do design them so that they can be built, meaning that if you had all of the brick it would take to build any of the designs we've undertaken, you could build it at home and it would be fine. But we do glue it together, so when we ship it, so it can go from California to Massachusetts and still not take any damage if somebody was to touch it, push it, or moving it in and out of a crate. We also put steel in, and when I was working on the Thanos build, the steel in his arm was a little bit off, so we had to redesign sections of the gauntlet as we were putting it on. And I would say that was definitely a challenging point, because we're usually pretty close on timelines, because those models will normally go to an event like a Comic-Con, and that's not a moving target. That has to be there on a certain day. So we were really crunched to get that model done and out of the way so we could get building on the other one. It's probably important to call out that there's only, Chris, you probably know the number better than me, but there's a finite number of master builders, which I'll let Chris fill in. And then within our team, we only have, I think, 5 builders that would be considered builders full-time. And then we have access to 2 master builders internally in our shop, and then 4 designers, counting myself. So we're a small team, and something like Thanos took 350 hours to build. And at the same time, we're building 2 other models or 3 other models, plus a whole bunch of smaller things. So usually time for me is where, stressful moments find their way into my day-to-day. But
Yeah, I agree, Pete. That definitely can be stressful as far as it goes. For me, one of the more stressful moments was I was down in Sydney, Australia and I was receiving in a massive 21-foot long great white shark that we built in Enfield, and it came down and it ended up being broken when it arrived. So the whole back half, the tail on the great white shark broke off. So it required probably about, I'd say we worked on it for a solid week and a half, I'd say. And we had to fly 2 more mass model builders down to actually do it. And eventually we were able to repair it and get it built and finished and on display at an aquarium down there. So we do have to struggle through some of those things, just like you. Even though, like Pete said, our models are glued and have steel inside of them, you know, rough seas can happen. So things happen at home as well with you. So you may be building along and your model might fall apart, but the key is it's a Lego brick. You can still build it, repair it, and get back at it. And in the end, hopefully your model will look just the way you envision it, right? So so that was my frustrating time, but in the end, it was completed, and everyone enjoyed it very much.
And it was a success.
It was a success. That's right.
And
Oh, by the way, Ella, this is my daughter, Ella. She's decided she wanted to come down and chime in, apparently. Sam, do we have any more questions?
can I say something?
You've got a few people asking, what's one of your favorite Lego sets that you've built?
I know.
That's
Favorite.
I have
definitely, there's 2 camps in that, right? You got your favorite set when you were a kid, which I really was a fan of. Well, it got really dark in my house. I was really a fan of the space sets, and there was a line called Blacktron, and there was a very specific set that, as an adult, I'm actually in the process of on my own time redesigning. So that's one of my favorite ones. But as an adult, I really like the recreation of Cinderella's castle. I think that's one of the most beautiful Lego sets that have ever come out. It's actually on display in my house downstairs. But even closer to home, I really like these ones. This is the TIE Fighter pilot helmet from Star Wars. I think these models are really cool. So they're starting to get a little bit more detailed and a little bit more display model-y, and I really like those as a nerd who collects things.
Yeah, Pete, I like that. For me, growing up, I was always a huge fan of space. Anything space related. I'm a kid, really grew up through the 90s and during the space shuttle, going up to International Space Station, stuff like that. So for me, the Technic space shuttle was by far my favorite set growing up. And I wish I knew where it was. It's somewhere around my parents' house, I believe. They're just not telling me where it is. So that is by far my favorite set growing up.
And we're almost out of time here. I figured we'd ask one last question. A few folks wanted to know, what age did you guys start building?
So I guess for me, I really started when I was pretty young. So I'd say I really started building around 4 or 5 years old. And it really ramped up because I'm actually a 2nd generation Lego master model builder. So my father is a retired master model builder, and he started working at Lego, I believe, when I was around 8 or 9. And when that happened, I had a lot more Lego coming home as far as my birthday and holidays and stuff like that. So that just really increased my love of Lego growing up. So, but yes, I started at a fairly young age. Was always a big Lego fan.
Yeah, I would say a lot like Chris. Believe it or not, when I started in the shop, most people that were in the shop didn't necessarily grow up with Lego the way that Chris and I did. I think I was one of the first master model builders that could say with 100% certainty, as a kid, I played with Lego brick all the time. So I always joke when I'm asked, on the road or in interviews, that I started my tutelage under my brother Everett, who's 3 years older than I am, when I was big enough to hold Lego brick, which means probably around the age of 3. And without him, I wouldn't be here today. So I've been using Lego brick for about 30 some odd years. A really long time. This is not the best expression of a beach scene, but I did kind of pull something together. just as like a basic option. Oops, that's not what I want to share. So I didn't have time to pick out faces, and they're all swimming, but I made a scene with my kids in it. So you got, this is Cora and Ella, and then this would be Liam. They're out swimming in the ocean, having a good time. I started to put some crabs out, but this is really where you spend most of your time, you know, but I show this not because I think it's fantastic in its model design, but for me, no matter if I'm doing a human being or an animal, or I'm doing even a car, you want to think about a background story, because it all starts with that. That's where you get your interest. That's where you get your focus. So when I started to do this, it wasn't about just making something that looks like a beach. It was, what do you do at the beach? And then you start to import stuff from your own life is a really great jump off point when you're designing. So throwing my kids in there gives me an instant, oh, this is how they have fun at the beach, and I could go from there. So that's my little beach scene. You know, I wish I had, you know, if I had about 20 minutes more, I could have really fleshed it out. But thank you for the suggestion. It was fun, and I appreciate the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you, Pete. That was awesome.
So yeah, we're about at the end of the hour. Anything else you guys would like to share? Any final tips, tricks, thoughts for the builders out there?
No, I think the key thing here is that we had a good time. I hope you all had a good time as well. And once again, make sure your parents will, if you'd like to, post your creations. Hashtag Make It With Michaels and hashtag Lego. So we'd love to see them.
Yeah, and I would just add on top of that, the biggest trick to improving your skills is doing. So if you want to get better at Lego or drawing, whatever your ambitions are, get out there, take them out, build them. The more you use it, the more you're going to get skillful at it. So that would be my tip. Don't be intimidated. Get in there. Just try to make anything and everything. And one day maybe you can have Chris's job. I'm going to keep mine. But
oh, come on.
Chris is going to retire at this point.
So thank you, everybody. We're at the end of our time.
Everyone.
We're at the end of our time today, so just be sure to visit michaels.com/classes to rewatch this session or any of the others hosted by Chris and Pete or any of the other creators. And you can share your creations today with hashtag Lego, hashtag Make It With Michaels, so we can see some of your work. We'll also be sending out instructions, as mentioned to a few of you in the Q&A, so keep an eye out for those. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.